Welcome everyone to the February program of the Philadelphia Committee on City Policy. I'm Jeff Hornstein. I'm on the board of PCCP. We are continuing to be virtual, obviously. Hopefully that will change for our next season, but for now, we are doing this through Hollywood Squares. So I'm really happy to present to you some colleagues and friends of mine who are real leaders in the impact economy, and they will tell you what exactly that means. But Cory Donovan is the executive director of ImpactPHL. It's a nonprofit dedicated growing Philadelphia's impact economy. Brings together investors, family offices, social entrepreneurs, business leaders, really trying to build an economy that is focused on more than just profit. And Cory will tell you his take on this, but it's, I think, real cutting edge stuff, and Philadelphia is on the cutting edge of it. Before Cory helped launch ImpactPHL in 2016, he comes from economic development, community building. He was with a tech startup incubator, and he ran the Roanoke Blacksburg Technology Council. And he's also been a corporate guy in the past, but we won't hold that against him. He's got a degree from University of Scranton and an MBA from Johns Hopkins. So I will, without further ado, turn it over to Cory, who will do a brief slide presentation, turn it over to his colleague, Richard Binswanger, and then we'll open the floor for questions. So I'm gonna mute myself and sit back and enjoy.
Great. Well, thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Tom. And thanks to all of you for making time and giving us the opportunity. Tom, if you have the slide deck, if you can pull it up or enable slide sharing, and I can do it on my end, whatever you prefer. We can walk through there. If you go to the next slide, Tom, please. So I usually start the conversation by saying that we've been around for 5 years, but in the last 2 years, climate change, COVID, and Black Lives Matter, racial justice have kind of forced people to see things in a little bit of a different light, lean into a conversation in a little bit different way. But while they're out donating more money and volunteering and protesting and voting all their values, a blind spot is generally where their money is invested. Next slide, please. So we talk about this in the ImpactPHL space as one pocket thinking and two pocket thinking. So most of us have adopted or assumed or been taught a two pocket version of we make money with our left hand through running a business and investments. We do good with our right hand through donating and volunteering and voting, et cetera, et cetera. But I would argue that if you're not being intentional, your left hand is probably creating the problems at a faster rate than your right hand can fix them. And for those on this call, you may know that Philadelphia has bigger problems than a lot of other cities and regions. Number one in poverty, number one in incarcerated population, opioids, et cetera. So we have bigger problems, and we're actually below average in charitable giving. So we actually have less money to do it with, almost by definition, unless you've got some brilliant ideas or maybe you're crazy. Almost by definition, we need another tool in our tool belt. So it's not to say we shouldn't be donating. We should do that. We should increase that. But it's a yes, and we also need to look at where our money is invested and what it's doing. Next slide, please. Put differently, that's for those who have heard the term shareholder capitalism, which optimizes for profit and shareholders only, versus a stakeholder capitalism, stakeholder economy, which optimizes for people, planet, community, as well as profit. Next slide, please. And I'm going to move quickly just because we have a lot to cover here. We want to hand things off to Richard, who's involved in a number of different things, and then we can maybe have time for questions. Happy to come back to this stuff. ImpactPHL itself, I describe as we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We're actually 5 years old as an initiative and 3 years old as a nonprofit, so still fairly young. And our mission is to engage and grow the impact investing community here in Philadelphia. So our theory of change involves when we're intentional about where our money is invested and what outcomes are produced with that money, the economy, the businesses, and what they do and what they prioritize changes as well. At the end of the day, for us, this is about building a more equitable, more resilient, and more sustainable regional economy. And I don't think we can do that without being intentional about where our money is and where it sleeps at night and what kinds of outcomes it's creating. Next slide, please. This is really just to indicate that ImpactPHL really came about fairly organically with different organizations and different people looking at this issue over many years, thinking, how do we actually fix Philadelphia's problems? And running into this idea that, listen, we can't continue to sort of do this after the fact band-aiding of problems. No matter what issues you care about, we're not making a lot of progress on them. So we have to ultimately go back to the source to say, how are the problems originating, and how do we help reduce creating them in the first place, right? It's sort of if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man a fish, you feed him for a lifetime. We have to ultimately get out in front of this. Next slide, please. This slide really is just to indicate that this is a movement that's growing. This isn't a new concept. The Quakers were, one of the first, if not the first, impact investors in this country when they refused to invest in slavery. So it's not exactly a new concept, but it's still fairly nascent because the typical financial approach is, if you have money, it should be maximizing return, and that profit is the risk-adjusted return. The two-dimensional equation of investing is the only way to look at it. We're asking, and a lot of other people are moving towards the direction of adding a third dimension, which is, what are the outcomes associated with my investments, and do I agree with those, and is my money aligned with my values? Next slide, please. I think about our work as a 4-step process with a 2-step call to action. So we want to engage people where they are, non-judgmentally, non-prescriptively, and ask questions. Do you know where your money sleeps at night? Have you had this conversation with your financial advisor? Do you know what your money is in, and do you agree with it? Challenge this two-pocket thinking that giving back is enough to fix the problems that we care about. Inform people about alignment of investing and how that can take form. And that's not a sort of simple, hey, do X. It's actually a little more nuanced and complex than that, but it's not complicated. At the end of the day, we're asking people to be intentional and then empower them to take action. And so a lot of our times, our role is as the steroid, not the muscle, right? It's being the support ecosystem. It's helping them understand. It's helping them take a look. It might be giving them resources to help point them in the right direction, and maybe potentially connecting them with different people who can advise them on their money if necessary. But ultimately, we're just asking people to be intentional and move down this continuum, know where your money sleeps at night, and be comfortable with it, that aligns with your values. And if it doesn't, make changes. Our North Star really, though, is any of your money invested locally? Like I said earlier, we donate locally, volunteer locally, we care about our backyards. But while it's very easy to buy Vanguard mutual funds and it's very easy to invest in Apple and Tesla, it's actually not very easy to invest in your own backyard. And if you're not an accredited investor, it's actually quite difficult for most people. So that's our North Star. And ultimately, we want to get more of Philadelphia's net worth, our financial horsepower, aligned with what's good for the future of Philadelphia. Next slide, please. So this is really a wheel to kind of show where we've been over the last 5 years and what we've done to kind of engage, challenge, inform, empower. We have a lot of it is one-to-one conversations. People like Richard, from even before I was involved, talking to people. How do you see the world? What's important to you? Where's your money invested, et cetera. We have a thought leadership series. We have monthly programming now, virtually online. You're all welcome. It's completely free online. Every month we have a topic, whether it's Black and brown business or climate change or gender issues, et cetera. We also have our flagship event coming up in May called the Total Impact Summit. We did that twice before the pandemic, had to take 2 years off. It's coming up. And then we do a lot of collaborating because, again, this is a cooperative infrastructure. This isn't a matter of a few people in the corner doing something, but we really do need to get this out to every individual, every institution, anyone who has capital or has control of capital in the Philadelphia region, be thinking more about this. I always say, does it make any sense for anybody in the Philadelphia region, given what's happening here, to be invested in the gun industry or the prison industry if you understand the social problems that afflict and when I say Philadelphia, we mean the region of Philadelphia broadly, not the city of Philadelphia. Next slide, please. Like I said earlier, the work that we do can kind of be hard to put your finger on. Our programming is easy to see, our thought leadership series, et cetera. But a lot of our work can be that one-to-one engagement. But what we've heard from people locally, like Brad Aronson, for those of you that know Brad, or Chris Wilmot, or Vanessa Briggs, formerly with the formerly known Brandywine Foundation, now named the Health Equity Alliance, that the work we're doing is really critical, as well as national leaders like Village Capital and SOCAP, who say, we wish there were more things like ImpactPHL throughout the country because it makes it easier for us to do our work there. So we're getting that kind of anecdotal testimonials feedback to us that the work that we're doing is really valuable. Next slide, please. This is exciting to me. And as we have been tracking impact investment opportunities here in the Philadelphia region, about 2.5 years ago, we heard from people that this messaging about how is your money invested and is any of your money invested locally, that resonated. So people wanted it. They were like, this is really interesting because I hadn't thought about it this way. You're opening up a blind spot for me. This is interesting. How do I do that? Where do I do that? Where are these opportunities? What do they look like? What's possible? And I just had a conversation yesterday with a foundation who's saying, hey, we have a carve out from our endowment, but we're sort of wondering what else can we do? And then I showed him a resource that we have that I'll talk to you about. And he said, this is incredible. I think we actually need to double our carve out from 2 million to 4 million because it looks like there's tremendous opportunity here. And that's music to our ears. And that's actually success for us if a foundation can double their carve out and invest their money locally. So we started cataloging where are the investable opportunities, whether it's in real estate or early stage enterprises or nonprofits that are borrowing money to build with their mission, or impact investment funds, or even crowdfunding, which is done online, or local CDFIs that have investment opportunities for as little as $1,000. And last year we tracked, eight local funds here in the Philadelphia region. So even if you don't have the time, interest, or expertise to do direct investing yourself, there are a number of opportunities for you to put your money to work with someone else who can invest your money with intentionality. A lot of different flavors here, from healthy food to Black and brown founders to Black and brown businesses, social justice, racial justice, what do they call it? Justice tech with the decarceration fund. So that was exciting to me because sometimes the mechanism of how you make investments gets in the way itself. And there's actually more funds than this that are out there that we can't talk about publicly for various reasons, SEC rules, and others coming to market still. So there's a lot of investment opportunities out there for people. And again, when we show that to people, it's like opening their eyes because again, it can be hard to find these local opportunities. Next slide, please. So this is just a quote from former CEO of Opportunity Finance Network, Mark Pinsky, saying that, our investments have a voice, they have an agenda. If you're not controlling it, someone on Wall Street probably is. And I can almost assure you that, that it's probably doing possibly the exact opposite of what you would hope it to be doing. So that's really our call to action. We have some tools online that I walk people through to really bring this home, because it's not just the foundations and the high net worth folks, but this goes down to the average Joes with a 401k. This goes to where employers are, what mutual funds they're offering in their 401k plans. It really is all Philadelphians, no matter how much or how little money they have, institutions, organizations, family offices, and individuals. And so I think the next slide is our sponsors. So these are just organizations that are helping to fund our work and helping to inform our work. And so as I hand off to Richard Binswanger, who is a board member of ImpactPHL, a founding board member of ImpactPHL, has been involved and had his hands in a lot of different do-good stuff in the Philadelphia region, and ultimately trying to fix Philadelphia's issues and challenges, ultimately sort of circling around to, we need to ultimately get beyond this give back mechanism. And so Gather Food Hall, which he's going to share with you about, is an investable opportunity. It's a business that has a mission built into it. But in order to achieve that mission, in order to get there and be able to achieve that mission, it needs investment capital. And it can't do it without that investment capital. So Richard, take it away.
Good. So we're going to switch slide deck for a second. But let me go, before I jump into this, let me start with sort of the general issue that's going on here. We're honestly in belief that capital has to flow. If we're going to make serious social change, capital has to flow in investment opportunities. And that for us, if you're interested in social change and impact, and you care about this community, some portion, probably not some huge portion, but some portion of your dollars needs to go into things to affect Philly. And things come, as Cory was talking about, all this stuff comes in all shapes and sizes as it relates to risk. How worried are you you're going to lose money? Well, there are places you can put it that have been very safe. The reinvestment fund is one of the obvious ones where you're not going to get a big return, but you know you're going to get a return. And And then there are other things like what Gather is, which is a very singular entity that is more risky. But even then, you can say there are ways to invest in something like it because you can invest in a fund of which it is included. So one of the things I think that we want to get to is sort of those obstacles, how you should think about how to invest and how to approach Philadelphia. Let me just say that Gather, and if you can bring up the slides, I'm not pitching you on an investment opportunity. I'm using Gather as one that I'm helping build, and it's a generic example. And so you won't see there's no financial information in this. You have to be an accredited investor anyway. But I do want, and we can, if anybody has questions on it, we can answer that. But I want to talk about how one group of people and organizations came together to think about impact in a different way and grow, hopefully grow something backwards. So let me go back a slide. Let me go back to the first question. You can go back one. Nope, wrong way. There we go. Our question. Nope, back. Going backwards. We're way ahead of ourselves. Other way. There we go. Thank you. So we're starting with a question. How do you attack the issue of inequity in our Philly community? And think about that for a second. If I asked you that question, typically the answer starts with, I'm going to think about policy. I'm going to protest. I'm going to get educated. I'm going to try to donate somewhere, right? Our answer to that question, next slide, is a little bit different. And it is, we're going to build something we call Gather, a destination food hall and a really cool place to get food. Like, we're going to build a food hall that you're going to want to go to. And now the question is, and next slide. And let me be perfectly clear. First and foremost, Gather is a food hall trying to make money. In fact, it has to make money or its social impact will fail, right? It has to be a highly successful business or we will have no social impact. Why come? Go ahead, next one. Why come? What makes Gather unique as a place to eat is that we're going to find you you're going to be eating from, each stall is going to be manned or womaned by the next great urban chefs. For an old guy like me, I always said, I saw Bruce Springsteen at the Main Point and Linda Ronstadt at the Main Point before they were in Bryn Mawr, before they were Bruce and Linda. That's what this is. You're going to get the chance to try to have some of the best food from chefs you've never heard of. Next slide. And we're going to do this in a highly impactful way. 3 critical pieces. 1, incubating BIPOC food entrepreneurs. 2, we're going to put this in a community and think of it as part of revitalizing North Philly. And 3, we're going to address a problem that some of you may or may not have heard of, but it's a serious one, and it's college food insecurity. Next slide. So let's go through each of those things. How are we going to incubate BIPOC food entrepreneurs? This is really important because this is how the business works. It's actually the thing that's going to make people want to come here. Because what we're going to do is we're going to find really talented chefs, maybe sous chefs at some of the best places around, maybe people who have a food truck, people who don't have the capital and maybe the business savvy to start a restaurant, but you want to eat their food. And then we're going to give them a stall. We're going to give it to them for somewhere in the vicinity of 2 years. We're going to run the entire operation. Their job is to cook and to learn. We're going to bring some of the best restaurateurs in this area and we think beyond to mentor them. We're going to teach them while they are doing their thing. And we're going to do a revenue split with them. So they're going to make money, as are we. And we're going to, and then after 2 years, if successful and they show they warrant it, we will help support them get their own businesses and help them start their own restaurants or wherever they decide to go. Next slide. We're going to put it in an under-resourced community. It's going to, right now we are currently looking at and have a lease. We have an LOI with a facility, 10,000 square feet at 12th and Cecil B. Moore, right on the corner of Temple University, in the heart of North Philadelphia. And our goal here is to engage that community and sort of make the vibe theirs. Like, how do we make this a place that's going to attract all sorts of people, but a place that they can feel like this is home to me, and a place that is powerful for them. One of the things we have to do in that community, and for a lot of other reasons, is we know we have to provide an affordable meal. So we will warrant that every chef, every stall has to provide a full meal for $10 or less, so that a family of four can go out and enjoy a meal at Gather. And of course, we'll be giving hiring preferences to people in the community, and we've already started some partnerships to make that happen. Next. So college food insecurity is a problem people may not be aware of. 48% of community college students, and it's actually not that much lower for college students in general, say they're food insecure within a month. And research shows that if you do a little bit, just a little bit for students when they need it, their likelihood of graduation goes up drastically. So from our standpoint, we have a very simple thing. If you're a college student and you come in and you ask for a meal because you need it, and that's your decision, you'll get one. We'll give you a $10 voucher. You can buy one of the meals from any of the chefs at the food hall. Next slide. So who are we? One of the things that makes this interesting for me is the team. We're led by Little Giant Creative. It's a minority owned business. Some of you probably know Taib Smith and Megan Denenberg. They have been very big in Black and brown entrepreneurship and in creative space making. F&B is Jeff Benjamin. If you don't know Jeff, he is Mark Vettry's partner. And so a world-class restaurateur and the business side of what I'll call the Vettry empire. So we have a very strong connection there. The Brown family and Brown family ShopRites, Jeff and Josh Brown, are well known throughout the city for building community using food. And Believe in Students is a nonprofit that I chair the board of, founded by Sarah Goldrick-Rabb, a Temple professor who runs the Hope Center for College Community and Justice, and is the person who has put this notion of students' basic needs on the map. She is the foremost expert on this. So it is through the workings out of the Hope Center that we're applying those the things that we're doing. Next slide. So here's the point. We hope to have this open by Q1 next year. I'm going to say could be the end of this year, but we're looking to open at Q1 next year. And we need you to come. We hope you'll come because we know it's going to be one of the great places to eat in the city. And you're going to meet and get to taste from some of the next great chefs while we're building community, while we're feeding college students, and while we're incubating new businesses. So there's an Impact Food Hall, and I'll just finish by saying what I started with. It is It is working to be a profitable endeavor, and it's going to be built out of the fact that this is a place to do so. Oh, by the way, one of the reasons it's going to be, there'll be a bar. You certainly can come and drink as well. I think the next slide is just thank you and my email address. Yeah, thank you and my email address. And so with that, I will turn it back to Jeff.
Thanks. Thanks, guys. A lot of stuff. And the way we like to do Q&A is to pick it out of the chat. We can have people ask live questions when we're through with this if you're sparked. So first question is from Linda Orfanelli. Larry Platt, in a recent article, explained why he was against a public bank for Philadelphia and suggested that nonprofits like ImpactPHL could have more significant impact for our Black and brown citizens. Do you agree with his point of view? I guess that's for you, Cory.
Do you want me to take that, Cory, or you?
Well, I already put my answer in the chat. I think it's a good question, but just to summarize, and actually I'll quote Jay Cohen-Gilbert, founder of B-Lab here. There's always going to be inefficiencies in capitalism that require nonprofits, but I think we've gone too far where we sort of assume that nonprofits will fix all the problems, or local governments. And if Amazon is creating a problem, it has the resources to create that problem at a much faster scale than any nonprofit or local government can fix. And that's just one example, but we have to start to think more intentionally about how our businesses and our investments are doing what we want them to be doing, because otherwise we're not going to fix the Gordian knot of problems that are fixed on the back end, and those problems create other problems. And I think we're seeing that now. So that's my 2 cents. Richard?
Yeah, I'll just say I read the article. I pretty much agree with Larry. Derek's Green's heart's in the right place. I think it's an important idea to offer out, but I think there are other and better ways through a lot of the CDFIs. There are things out there that make it unnecessary. And for me, what I'd rather see is that City Council is working more closely with some of these organizations to get that money into their hands and distribute it. But the ideas that they're trying to focus on, I think, are absolutely right. It's just a question of whether it should be the city that runs a bank.
Yeah, I don't know. We can have that debate later. Maybe we should. Maybe we should have Larry and Derek come on for something. I had a question for Richard. I guess there's 2 questions about kind of the mechanics of the food hall and the investment opportunity.
Yep.
Mine was really, how are you going to go about recruiting the food entrepreneurs and chefs? And then Chrissy Kind asked if you are looking for investments.
We are looking for investments, and I will take that. Chrissy and I have known each other for, I'm 65 years old. We've known each other for 65 years. So I can certainly do that with Chrissy offline and anybody else that wants to. The food entrepreneurs is really helpful because the fact that we have a Jeff Benjamin and a Jeff Brown involved in this, and as well as Taib and Megan, means that we have deep reach already into the communities. We are well aware of chefs, sous chefs, and people who are getting started. The key is they have to be high quality. So we are putting together a process to evaluate chefs. We're only talking about 6 stalls at a time. So we conceivably could pull from 1 or 2 from outside Philly. The goal here is to find the right that person who we think is really exceptional and who needs this kind of mentoring and who needs this kind of support. So the process is being put in place, but we already have a pipeline based on who's involved.
Cool. Andy, you had your hand up, or virtual hand up? Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, my virtual hand. You can see my virtual hand.
I want to see your virtual face, Andy. I haven't seen you for a while.
It's probably better than my real face. So anyway, a couple things. One is I disagree about the Philadelphia Public Bank. I think I've worked in the community on financing and getting resources and capital for a long time to small businesses and communities. And I think there's always a need. It doesn't hurt to have another resource out there. And that, in fact, the public bank could actually help to support some of the CDFIs if it brings in more capital. So it's not an either or. It's an and, I think.
Yeah, and I'll just say my answer was not definitive. That's sort of where I feel on it, but I think your point is well taken.
Yeah, I mean, even to the point where it could probably fund your project, you know. So it's like not there's not enough. Let's just say that in Philadelphia, you know, there's not enough risk being taken, for one, and if it could serve as a backstop, for example, for your project or a CDFI making a loan, that would be one of the ways. And I may end up being on one of the boards to help make sure that it's done properly. Anyway, the other thing I want to mention is that when I was working for CMAC up until last year, we had a food truck that we used as an incubator. I don't know if you guys knew about that, but we could definitely share some of our things that we learned from that. A lot of hardworking people and a lot of learning and knowledge that, and not everybody goes on to become a bricks and mortar place, but they certainly learned what the steps are to get there.
Lovely. Well, you and I will talk. We've already said we're going to do that, and I'd love to do that with you.
Okay. Yeah, no, and I think that points to maybe the need to make sure the net is cast really broadly, right? Because there's some great food entrepreneurs in lots of different communities in this city. Some of them that I know that Taib and Megan and your team would have access to, and others that Andy would probably have greater access to, and some others. So it'd be great if you all got together on this. I would
and by the way, that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
In fact, part of this is the diversity of food, right? We're looking to put different tastes in this thing. So, you know, being able to pull from different communities should be able to help us do that.
Yep.
And one last thing, I do really love the idea of having it together with more than one, so that people go in there with an expectation that they have some choices. It will bring a larger crowd. They'll learn from each other, hopefully. Competition is good, and the learning from each other is probably the biggest positive that you can get. It's kind of like a mini Reading terminal is what you're.
Yeah. And although we are we will sort of at some level, they're closer to subcontractors to us, but they will get their own P&Ls. That'll be part of the learning. Everything will flow through us. One of the things, a single POS system, POS point of sale system. And by the way, that allows for on the college food insecurity side for it to be completely shame-free, because you can go up. Nobody will ever know whether you asked for a meal or didn't. And you'll be with all these other people who are just paying customers. So we're excited about that.
Other questions? I know that Cory is prepared to lead us through an interesting exercise that I've seen before, but I think would be really illustrative and maybe spark some more thoughts.
Hey,
Tom,
Jeff, Pedro does have a question there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pedro.
It's just a question going back to the CDFIs. I was on the board of the reinvestment fund for about 10 years. And I know that, you know, for a period of time, Jeremy was saying, we're doing something wrong because we have not lost a single loan that we have made during those years. And his point was, we're not taking enough risk. And then over the years, I was the founder of the one CDFI was very successful in the American Street Enterprise Zone. But then people, small business keep complaining. I mentioned that going to the CDFIs now is like going to a traditional bank. You got to produce 10 years of financial forms. You have to put your house for collateral. They request the birth certificate of your grandmother. It's just ridiculous. And then the closing cost to that. You get a loan of $50,000, it's like $7,000 closing cost. So it's moving away from the original mission. So how do we, in this conversation, try to, bring back some of the CDFIs back to this regional intent so they can serve the purpose and take risk in those communities, because you need to take risk to be able to lift some of those entrepreneurs so they can thrive. And then I agree on the conversation with a public bank. A public bank, besides being able to be more responsive to the needs of those entrepreneurs locally, will also be a Philadelphia-owned bank. We don't have two or three of them remain in the city. So I just like to hear your thoughts about the CDFIs part.
Yeah, Cory, you want me to start? You start.
I think this comes back to the conversation around what investors want, right? So at a high level, and I was just having a conversation yesterday with a female entrepreneur who's a tech startup. So they're not borrowing money from banks, they're seeking it from venture capitalists. And she was sharing that a lot of the female-focused, female-led VCs are actually harder to get money from than the traditional VCs, because they have, there's a number of things, but they have less money. Their investors don't want risk. And so they have higher standards than even the more traditional ones. But now that they exist, the more traditional VCs are saying, well, hey, since you're a woman, go get money from them, right? So she can't get it from the traditional VCs because an angle was created with women-led, women-focused, but they actually have a higher bar. I think this ultimately comes back to what signals investors are sending to those who are investing their money about what risk is acceptable and what returns are accepted. I think we have to unplug from that and say, listen, we're okay with accepting some risk because we know we need to do things differently. Without that, the financial systems, I think, continue to fine point things to say, let's reduce the risk at all costs and let's maximize the return at all costs. But when you get that, when you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you always got. That's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah. So it's funny because I was at the PACT meeting the other day. They were presenting to CDFI was presenting, and they said, ERISA gives us a AA rating. And my reaction was yours. Is that good or bad? Like, if it's that certain, then are you taking enough risk? I was actually on a call yesterday with a seminar that Bruce Katz ran, where they were talking about different kinds of financial products that are starting to emerge. Revenue-based funding, supply chain funding, all of it around. And some of the discussion I found most interesting was that the language needs to change. That we need to start thinking about this as you are in this. You're asking both questions, and that part of what you're trying to do is say, I got to consider the social impact of these investments. And so I'm with you as we have to start pushing again to opening up and saying, we are actually trying to make sure people aren't shut out. And I think there are more and more ways. I think that just means people like yourself have to keep pushing it, talking about it. And it's even the question about the city bank is getting us closer to that idea.
And so people have an idea what's going on. I mean, people who want to start businesses, I know in North Philly and in Kensington, they're borrowing money, but they're paying 30%, 35% interest rate.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the reality today. And we have those institutions in the community that are sort of like, thumbing their noses at them when they go to them.
It's interesting because Gather for us, one way we think about it is that the people involved actually have better access to capital than most of the people we're really trying to serve, the community and certainly the entrepreneurs. So one way we think about this is that we're we're building them up and that we're trying to find capital that goes through them, and actually they can start to build the names for themselves and create it so that when they're ready, not only will they be mentored, but they will be connected and supported in finding things. But it's an interesting way to look at it because it's a two-step process, and it would be better if they could just, get it directly.
Interesting. Other questions? And I do think there would be an interesting debate to be had here between the public bank advocates and those who don't, although the public bank, did the public bank legislation pass yesterday, Andy?
I believe there's still a conversation with the banking industry about some of the language, and they may have to set up this.
They tabled it, I think, Jeff.
Yeah, it's like almost there, but not quite.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not up for a vote yet.
It might be still, yeah, I think we're booked for the rest of the season here, but it would be an interesting conversation to have. Other
I'm sort of-
questions? If not, maybe Tom, Cory says he can walk you through the process here. If you want to give screen sharing to Cory, he's got a really interesting, it's pretty short, right, Cory? A couple minutes.
Yeah, so I'm gonna switch it over. We'll see what
You're
happens.
on mute.
Because maybe
Cory.
it doesn't. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you
I think
fine.
I was on mute. Can you switch it over, Tom?
Yeah, I'm doing that now. I'll see what happens.
Okay.
Who can share? Let's see. I hope I don't lose control. Oh, this is a thing. We'll see. Is that, is your button on?
Not yet.
All right. I'm clicking a bunch of buttons here. Excuse me, everybody.
I mean, somehow I have screen sharing ability, I think.
Maybe you're
No, I don't. It's never mind. It's green, but I thought that would work.
Yeah,
Do you need the slides, Cory?
It's not a slide, it's on the web. So either I can talk Tom through it, but it's probably going to go faster and more smoothly if I can do it. But Tom, I'm happy to walk you through it and try to keep it super simple.
yeah. Well, we could do that in the meantime. I'll keep poking around. I mean, it may be with Zoom that you have to restart the whole meeting to reset the settings. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, here, I'm going to drop something in the chat.
All right.
I'll just drop it to everyone. It's not a secret. But we can do a quick demo. And then if other folks want to follow up, they have the link.
All right, I'm loading it. I'm pulling it up.
Okay. So while he's pulling that up, I'll share. This is, sometimes I say that, ImpactPHL more often than not is the steroid, not the muscle. What we're trying to do is engage people's progress at the speed of trust, have conversations about where your money is, which is tough enough, and then show people. And the reason I use this tool, even though this is a little bit of a sidestep on our mission, because again, we're about how much money is flowing into the Philadelphia community, and using mutual funds in public markets is almost on the opposite end of the scale. But what I learned a couple of years ago when talking to people about this is people nod their head and they say, yeah, I agree. But then you show them where their own money is and they're like, wait, you're talking to me? I'm part of the problem. And I can tell you story after story about how comically misaligned people's money is. Local organizations who have public initiatives around recidivism and returning citizens, and then their endowment gets an F in prisons. A Black woman who runs a DEI consulting firm here in the Philadelphia region. And then we do this exercise to show her where her own company's money and her own personal money is, and she gets an F in prisons. A local organization involved in environmental issues, and their 401k plan gets a D's and F's in fossil fuels and deforestation. And so it really, I think this exercise, while it's a sidestep on our mission, and we can come back to the second part of this exercise about how local money is flowing, this is I think an interesting exercise. So Tom, if you scroll down a little bit, there's those little blocks, fossil fuels, gender, these are lenses. So this is As You Sow as a nonprofit. They've been around since 1992. They have a tool that I think, and you'll see why, is a very easy way for anyone to understand if you are invested in mutual funds, how your money is personally invested or how your company money is invested or how whatever. And so there's 7 lenses here: fossil fuels, gender, guns, deforestation. Keep scrolling down, Tom. weapons, which is military, tobacco, and prisons. So let's say that on this call, we're talking about social justice, Black Lives Matter. Click on prisons, Tom, for a proxy to social justice and racial justice. Now, Vanguard offers a fund called the Vanguard S&P 500. The ticker symbol, Tom, that if you can type into that search box is VTSAX. VTSAX is the fourth largest mutual fund on the planet. And so the odds, V as in Victor, T SAX. So the odds that your money is invested in this are actually pretty high. If you're an employee of a company, it's actually almost certain that your company is offering this in its mutual fund. So imagine being a part of that endowment that I was talking about, or a company, and you're really out there protesting and you care about this issue. What I love seeing is people's faces when they see, wait, my money gets an F in prisons. Now, if you scroll down, Tom, slowly, you'll see that this is actually a very robust tool. It tells you where your money is invested, why it's good or why it's bad, et cetera. And if you keep scrolling down, Tom, you're going to see a report card that actually does all 7 lenses. And again, I love seeing people's faces here, because once they see that, wait, my money gets a D in fossil fuels and a C in deforestation, the only thing I'm really actually doing good in is gender, it's like a punch in the face, right? People are like, oh boy, okay, this isn't good, right? And that's the first step, right? I'm not comfortable with this. Now, what do I do with my money? I can get into a broader exercise, but I'm going to, the next assumption people make is, in order to make money, I got to do harm, right? If I do good or I make improvements on this, I'm going to sacrifice return. That's not necessarily true. And I do an exercise, but I'm going to skip that. Tom, if you can go to impactphl.org /index. Now, again, that exercise is just to show people, hey, if your money is here, and as much as I can, I do it real time with people to say, tell me what mutual funds you're invested in. I've done scoring for entire employers across their whole portfolio. I've done it for people. You can do it yourself. I'm happy to do it. But this is the opposite end of the spectrum, right? So let's say we just did this exercise and you said, wow, I get an investment that has positive impact on recidivism in the prison system and returning citizens, and actually has local impact. And I'll come back to that. This is just a landing page on our website. When we started this work 2.5 to 3 years ago, we just started cataloging local investable opportunities. And our goal was to say, what is the opportunity? What's the investment opportunity? And what's the impact? And so we started cataloging on one sheet. Now we have 4 different tabs along the bottom. This is just a landing page that says, what is this? Who's doing it? Why are we doing it? Et cetera. Now, Tom, at the bottom, the 4th tab you can't see. But if you go to the last one, I like to start with the last one, which is crowdfunding. Now, if you're not an accredited investor, your ability to invest in your own backyard is limited to CDFIs and crowdfunding. Sites like Raise Green, WeFunder, Republic. And what we try to do is capture any investment opportunity that's on one of those sites that also has a positive impact, we put in here. So Wearwell is Stitch Fix for sustainable fashion. Inamed is an at-home blood testing device. The National Energy Improvement Fund funds retro upgrades, solar and insulation. And what was the one that's all the way at the top that was most recent? Oh, I wanted to talk about Mosaic. Mosaic is a Black and brown real estate development firm that has done 2 projects and is now working on the Navy Yard. And in each of their projects, they do a crowdfunding campaign, because not only do they don't need the money. What they want to do is change who financially benefits from these investments. Tom, go to inclusive real estate, the next tab to the left. So again, you might say, Cory, what I'm really interested in is, affordable housing or workforce housing. So on here, we have Esperanza, which is looking for loan guarantees, which is a whole different way to leverage your money. If you scroll down a little bit, you're going to find Women's Community Revitalization Center, which buys up properties before speculators can in order to build affordable housing for women and children and veterans. We have Kensington Corridor Trust, which is the city's first neighborhood trust, which is doing interesting work to buy properties before speculators can and turn control over to the people in those communities so they can determine what gets built in their neighborhood. Tom, go to social enterprises, please. On here, it's mostly for-profit tech startups that are building businesses specifically built with intentionality in mind, like War for Good. Again, I can't get into all these because it takes up time to describe what they're doing. But again, this is publicly available. This is on our website. Again, the goal here is to make these visible, because we're hearing from people, I'm interested in this, but I don't know where these opportunities are. You see Philly Youth Basketball on there. They're one of the nonprofits we highlighted, because you can actually make money loaning money to nonprofits. So World Cafe Live borrowed money during the pandemic to rebuild while no one was in their facility. Philly Youth Basketball is borrowing money to build their facility. And then there's a bunch of tech startups working on all kinds of stuff, from safety and security to climate change related issues, et cetera. Go back to the first tab, please, Tom. This is funds and evergreen. So again, maybe you don't have the time, interest, and expertise to make direct investments and do the due diligence across all this stuff. But right there at the top, you see the decarceration fund, right? So if we just did this exercise and say, hey, I get an F in prisons, you can actually invest your money for positive change on the opposite end of the spectrum by putting money to work with Chris Bentley at the decarceration fund. And if you scroll down this list on your own or through Tom, you'll see all kinds of different funds, from Black and Brown real estate developers to Ben Franklin Technology Partners, to the CDFIs, Community First and Reinvestment Fund, Hatch Bio Fund, which is working on cures for certain kinds of cancers and hepatitis, et cetera, et cetera. And as we come across new opportunities, which Richard and I have a call every week, where are the opportunities? What do we see as we're crowdfunding those from our network, because they come in from all different quarters of the universe? We're putting them on here to make them visible to people and ultimately drive capital from Philadelphia into Philadelphia for a better future for Philadelphia.
And so impactphl.org/index, I just would tell you that over the next few months, our hope and expectation is we're going to be getting this onto a tech platform that will allow you to sign in, will give you push notifications, will allow you to communicate with other potential investors as a way, and to be able to search more quickly for what opportunities are out there. So we're very excited by all that's happening in Philly, and we're encouraging people to get involved both by investing and by sharing the idea with others.
Cory, can you put that link in the chat so everyone can see it?
Yes, sir.
Jeff, I'm sort of interested if people have questions or fears or issues, and we have a couple minutes around the whole investing category.
Richard just posed a question. Do you mean fears of the approach, or the fears for their own money?
I usually find it fears for their own money. I just wonder if people are excited about this. It's like, I'd never do this. Why would I? Those questions come up all the time, and we'd love to answer. We'd love to address them.
To me, it's super interesting. I mean, there's a lot of folks in our network who are city employees, former city employees. That's kind of where PCCP started. And, one thing that really has always occurred to me is, like, where are the municipal employee pension funds invested? Where are the union pension funds? I mean, I remember going to an AFSCME convention and asking their leadership, where's your pension fund invested? Like, you're all about jobs. Where's your pension fund invested? And they didn't know. And I had done some research. I said, congratulations, you created a lot of jobs in Brazil last year. So it's like, there's a lot of information here, but there's a lot of institutions that we are part of that we can move in different directions. And I see Andy. Is that your hand up again, Andy, or is that still from last time?
Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
Just 2 points. One is on that. It's interesting that some people view the stock market and some other these like crazy investments as less risky than investing in your own community, when in fact PSERS wasn't doing very well for the last number of years, just having to do a little better right now. I was wondering, in terms of investors though, is a typical investor looking at just one of those categories and investing, or can somebody invest in a category or a group of things through ImpactPHL, or is it just like, hey, this is the one that you need to look at and just focus in on one investment of a project or a program? You know what I'm saying?
I think that's where the funds come in handy, Andy. And again, we're focused on local investments, which can be some of the harder investments to make. But that's where I think those funds come into mind. So you can pick your flavor. If you want to make direct investments that are very targeted in a specific asset class or a specific return or a specific impact, and you want to put a fine point on that, if you're okay with broadening that a bit, then those funds can help to diversify as well as make those, across a series of investments.
And one last question on the equity side. Are some people just saying, I just want to have an ownership stake of this thing, but I'm not really worried about a return on the investment because I want to be able to say I own this great, program project that's going to create lots of jobs or something like that.
Yeah, from my perspective, if you met one investor, you met one investor. Everybody has their own view on the world. We've had people show up at our front door and say, I want to do something differently. I have enough. I just want to maximize impact. There's some people show up and say, I'm a finance first. They don't say that, but don't mess with my return, but I don't want to do harmful stuff, you know? And then there's other people who have said, listen, if we can solve cancer and I lose my money, but the option is we could have solved cancer. And it didn't work out, but we took a shot, right? That's a huge game-changing, once in a lifetime opportunity. And no financial advisor would ever pitch that kind of investment to someone. Hey, you might lose all your money, right? Again, part of the financial system gets in the way of what people actually want. I've done enough conversation with people now to know that this resonates with people. But the financial advisory system, because platforms on those big financial advisors, I won't single them out, but you know them, right? Name one. Pretty much everything that we're talking about here, with the exception of the reinvestment fund, is not on their platforms, right? And when I show it to people, that endowment I talked to yesterday, they're like, holy crap, right? How do we find these things? So I think that's the thing that we're trying to unlock here is people want it, we need it in our community. It's how financial decisions are traditionally made that gets in the way.
And I
So
just say
inspiring that
quickly,
Barbara Capozzi's calling her broker right now and shifting all of her money.
I just say quickly, Andy, that it's even, think about diversity as across asset classes, across geographies, across whatever. That's true with impact investing and how concessionary you want to be. For me, donation is just another form of investing. It's just one where you're going to lose whatever tax, you get your tax write-off and you'll get that money back. That's it. And it's you know what your risk is. So we see people sort of saying, for this one, I'm going to do something risky. For something else, I want it less risky.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? I'm back off mute. I just want to ask something. Actually, I serve on the 401k fiduciary committee at my employer. And the very first and the last thing that we encounter in anything we want to do, and we have tried, is ERISA rules and federal laws about what our fiduciary responsibility is and how we can be held liable if we don't act in the best interest of the investments and the participants in the fund and what's offered to them. And we run up against this, and ERISA has tried to tinker with the administrations have tinkered with some of the ERISA rules, but it's really hard. We just tried to get our Fidelity and Vanguard to, and I'm not talking out of turn here, but to look into ESG funds, to make a better offering to employees, and that's actually where it's going to make a difference in all of this. That's where people decide. That's the friction in the system where people can place their money. Exactly what you were talking about, Cory. What's offered to them, and ERISA is very clear. If we advise or if we put up any offerings that are not clear in their ROIs and all the different measurements, I mean, a whole chain of people can be held liable. How are you going to address that?
Well, I'll say, and I don't know how much time you have here, but a couple of things. Number one is I've had a 401k advisor tell me point blank, you realize this is more work for us, right? So again, I think the financial system is getting in the way. ERISA certainly are laws, and we've made progress, and then we took some steps backwards. And I think in the future, you'll see more steps making this easier as different administrations come through. But ultimately employees want this. And Tom, if you go back to that website, I'd be happy to talk to you one-on-one that we showed, the As You Sow website, you'll see at the top of that page, a big block above the 7 ones that we saw, where As You Sow is now doing the analysis of public companies, large public companies, including the hometown team here, Comcast, and Disney, and Visa, and Apple. And they're doing the work for their employees to say, here's what your 401k plan is invested in. And if you want change, you need to ask for change within your company. So they're going to create, there's headaches coming to companies that are completely ignoring this. And again, I don't think the answer is you have to completely flip your 401k plan. What you have to do is offer some additional options to your employees that make it easier for them to invest in sustainably. I think that's the step in the right direction. And again, you and I can chat offline, but I will circle back with you about this because this has been an issue for us.
Yeah, I don't understand the whole ERISA argument because there's so many ESG funds out there now. There's so many ways to invest with impact. It's just a question of shifting pieces of your portfolio. I mean, ERISA sanctions all of these impact funds.
Well, no, Jeff,
And so, I
there's
mean-
there's more rules than that. We can't just switch off. We're locked into certain funds and certain selections, and it's not as easy as that.
But you can put your 401k out to market.
Yeah, the only I want to add in terms of the public sector, I served for 4 years on the Philadelphia Pension Board, and I'm the one who authored the resolution to divest money from the private prisons. I got in trouble with administration for doing that, but I did it anyway, and it passed, and it was adopted and implemented. And there are many, and we were told at the time, you can't do this because you have to maximize the return for your members. And actually, the more you peel off, that's not the case. The other thing I want to let you know is that the Philadelphia Pension Fund is very approachable to some of these ideas. So I suggest a conversation to be had with them and figure out ways and they can work together.
I'll second that. The board is approachable.
We are seeing, pension funds are in particular interesting places because, people are very worried long-term. So there's an investment statement, that you're going to approach. One of the things we found, not so much with pension funds, but with other investment vehicles is that if you can put, there is some social purpose in the statement, that helps support, you're being transparent.
Yeah, look, I mean, I was in the pension fund world for 5 years when I was in the controller's office. We joined the Council of Institutional Investors. I mean, most of the large pension funds, public employee pension funds, are way ahead of the curve on this stuff, right? I mean, all the climate change stuff was driven by CalPERS, CalSTRS, the Norwegian State Pension Fund, the Dutch State Pension Funds, the ones that are really ahead of the curve. And they invest in all these big corporations, and the big corporations have to take them seriously. So there is like this whole large scale institutional investing trend. What I find really intriguing and interesting and exciting about what Cory and Richard are doing and others is that they're bringing this down to the local level and really looking at how do we move capital towards, Cory always says this, how do you align your investment with your values? And if we say that we're in favor of, Black Lives Matter, if we're in favor of local equity, the capital piece cannot be ignored. Anyway, I think we're out of time here. So Ginsberg, do you want to close this out?
Sure. Everybody, I think we've lost a few people, but some people are still on. So thank you very much. This is to be posted. The video will be posted, within a couple of weeks, I hope. The next meeting, Pedro, can you update us on the next meeting? It's Ken Weinstein, I think, right?
Yeah, Ken Weinstein is our guest speaker for March, and then he is going to discuss socially responsible real estate development, specifically in Germantown and what's going on around the Wayne Junction station area. And then we are going to have Derek Reed to talk about the public bank in April. So there you have it.
Questions or put them on a list because there will be lots. All right, and I'll make a last pitch again. Thanks to everyone who's contributed to our little organization. We do take donations. Send an email to us at philippolicy@gmail.com, and we'll tell you how to do that. And that's it. Richard, Cory, thank you very much. It's been great.
Thanks.
And let's thank you for the opportunity. It's good to talk to you all.